The wind howled across the frozen plains like a wounded beast, tearing through the silence of the winter-stricken valley as if it were warning the world that something terrible had happened. And when the Comanche warrior, Lone Cedar, first saw the faint shape in the snow, he thought it was a winter fox burrowing for warmth till he drew closer and saw golden curls stiff with frost, wide blue eyes blinking against swirling flakes, and a tiny, trembling face half buried in the merciless cold. A little girl, no more than 6, maybe 7, was trapped, buried up to her neck in snow, her cheeks raw and crimson with cold, her lips trembling as though each breath was a battle she wasn't sure she could win. Lone Cedar dropped instantly to his knees, not caring that the ice bit through his leggings, and brushed the snow from around her fragile neck, his heart pounding with a dread he hadn't felt since the day he'd lost his younger sister, years ago. "Little one," he murmured in a deep voice, softened by worry, "who did this to you?" But the girl couldn't speak. Her teeth chattered too violently, her eyes glassy with fear, as though she still expected whoever had buried her to return. Lone Cedar scanned the forest, his muscles tense, hand instinctively brushing the hilt of his knife. But there were no tracks, except old wagon ruts fading into the white horizon, meaning whoever had done this had fled long before the storm rolled in. He knew that if he didn't act now, the child would freeze within minutes. With urgency, he dug through the snow, freeing her tiny body, lifting her into his arms as gently as if she were carved from fragile ice. She weighed almost nothing, far too light, far too cold. Her thin dress was stiff and frozen, torn at the sleeve, offering no protection from the biting winds. Lone Cedar wrapped her instantly in his buffalo hide cloak and pressed her against his chest so she could absorb his warmth, feeling her tiny fingers clutch weakly at his fur garments. "I've got you," he whispered, even though she couldn't understand his language. "You're safe now. I give you my promise." But the nearest Comanche camp was miles away, and the storm had already buried most of the landmarks he relied on. He couldn't stay still, the cold would swallow them both, so he began the long journey on foot, carrying her against his heartbeat, the snow crunching under his moccasins as he pushed through the blizzard with the determination of a man who refused to lose another child to winter's cruelty. The wind lashed at his face. Ice gathered on his braids. His muscles burned from the strain, but he did not stop, not even when the girl whimpered softly, not even when his legs felt like they were carved from stone. After nearly an hour, her weak voice finally cracked the silence. "Mama, mama," she whispered, and Lone Cedar felt something twist painfully inside him. Whoever had left her here had meant for her to die. Maybe an outlaw gang, maybe frightened settlers, maybe someone cruel enough to abandon a defenseless child to the ice. Whatever the reason, Lone Cedar vowed then and there that he would not let her perish in this wilderness. "Your mother will be found," he promised gently, hoping the warmth in his voice reached her trembling heart. "But first, you must live." As he continued walking, she slowly drifted into a half-conscious state, her head resting against his chest, her breath faint but steadying. Lone Cedar pulled her closer, sharing every bit of heat he could spare, shielding her from the wind with the broad strength of his shoulders. The journey was endless. The plain stretched before him like a white ocean, the sky growing darker as storm clouds thickened overhead. But Lone Cedar did not falter. When his legs threatened to buckle, he thought of his sister's face, the way she had looked the night the winter fever had taken her hand. He pushed harder. When the cold crept into his bones, he shifted the girl higher on his back, letting her arms fall around his neck, whispering steady breaths of encouragement as though she could hear and understand. "Stay awake, little one. Stay with me." The snow deepened to his knees, forcing him to lift his steps high, each movement demanding all the strength he had left. Hours felt like days. The wind cut like knives. His vision blurred from exhaustion, but then, through the mist of swirling snowflakes, the dim orange glow of his tribe's distant fire signal flickered like a promise from the ancestors. Relief surged through him, giving him renewed energy. "We're close," he murmured, though the child was nearly unconscious. Quickening his pace, he trudged onward until he finally emerged through the tree line, where members of the Comanche camp rushed toward him, their expressions shifting from alarm to stunned disbelief as they saw the frozen girl cradled in his arms. The women hurried to bring warm blankets, heated stones, and herbal broth, while Lone Cedar knelt beside the fire, holding the child until her body began to thaw and color returned faintly to her cheeks. Slowly, her eyes fluttered open, and she looked up at Lone Cedar with fragile trust, whispering a single word, "You," in a trembling voice that broke whatever piece of his heart was still guarded. In that moment, Lone Cedar made a silent vow until her family was found her, until she chose a new one among his people. This child would never be alone again. She would never face cold, fear, or abandonment. He would protect her with the same fierce devotion he would have given his own sister. And no one outlaw, settler, or storm would ever harm her again. And as the fire crackled warmly beside them, melting the frost from her golden curls, Lone Cedar knew that this rescue was no accident. Their paths had crossed for a reason. Sometimes the Great Spirit placed a life in your hands, not by blood, but by destiny. And as she clung to him, trembling but alive, he whispered the promise he intended to keep for the rest of his life. "You are safe, little one. You are home." If you felt the power of this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more emotional, inspiring tales like this to life. Stay with us for more powerful stories.